Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a breaking headline moment that requires immediate correction before history is rewritten by a manufactured narrative. The sports world is currently being fed a calculated deception regarding the greatest attendance records in women's basketball history. While the Unrivaled League is currently taking victory laps across social media for drawing over 21,000 fans, claiming it as the pinnacle of the sport, the reality has been aggressively ignored. The true record belongs to Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes, who shattered the world's perception of women's sports by drawing over 55,000 fans to Kinnick Stadium. This is the story of how a manufactured milestone is trying to erase an organic cultural phenomenon. We have to stop the presses and address the sheer audacity of the victory laps currently taking place on social media platforms. There is a narrative being pushed, a specific angle being celebrated by detractors and critics, claiming that this recent event in Philadelphia represents the greatest basketball day in the history of women's sports. This claim is not just an exaggeration, it is factually incorrect. It is a distortion of reality that requires a direct confrontation with the numbers. Let's look at the data. The Unrivaled League, a 3-on-3 format, is celebrating an attendance figure of roughly 21,490 people. They are presenting this as the ceiling, the peak, the moment the world changed. But anyone with a memory that spans longer than 6 months knows this is false. We are seeing a deliberate attempt to bury the crossover at Kinnick, an event where the University of Iowa, led by Caitlin Clark, didn't just fill an arena, they filled a football stadium. 55,646 human beings paid to watch a women's collegiate basketball game outdoors. When you compare 21,000 to 55,000, there is no debate, there is no argument. Yet we see this desperate attempt to rewrite the timeline. We see what many are calling a scam in the presentation of these new numbers. We have to ask the uncomfortable questions that the mainstream cheerleaders are refusing to ask. How were these 21,000 tickets distributed? Was this organic demand, or was this a corporate flexing of muscle? We have reports and indications surfacing that suggest a significant portion of this recent crowd did not arrive through the traditional organic passion of fandom. We are talking about the involvement of politically driven corporations. We are seeing evidence of ticket pools being purchased in bulk. There are reports circulating that a single WNBA player purchased 60 tickets personally for friends and family. When you have individual players buying blocks of 60 tickets, when you have corporations buying massive pools of seats to distribute for free, you are not looking at a true measure of market demand. You are looking at a subsidized event. This is the definition of papering the house. It is an old industry tactic used to create the illusion of popularity where it may not exist to that scale. If you do not believe that corporate interests stepped in to ensure those seats were filled, you are ignoring the mechanics of modern sports promotion. We must question the legitimacy of a record that relies on bulk corporate buys versus a record that was driven by fans fighting to get into a stadium to see one specific generational talent. Contrast this with the 55,000 at Kinnick Stadium. That was not a corporate handout. That was not a buy one, get five free situation to get people out of the cold. That was a fever pitch. That was a fan base, the Caitlin Clark fan base, mobilizing in a way that had never been seen before in the history of the sport. Those fans showed up for the game, for the player, and for the history. They didn't need a celebrity to buy their ticket. They bought it themselves. Furthermore, if we are going to discuss the greatest attendance in women's sports history, we cannot ignore the 92,000 fans who attended the Nebraska volleyball match. While that is a different sport, it sets the context for what is possible. It proves that women's sports can draw stadium-sized crowds. But within the specific realm of basketball, the attempt to erase the 55,000 number is a direct insult to the intelligence of the viewing public. Critics and slows on Twitter are trying to frame this recent Unrivaled event as the standard bearer. They are trying to use this moment to diminish the impact of Caitlin Clark. They post photos of the crowd and say, "Look at this success, and Clark isn't even here." But this logic collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Of course she isn't there. She is not participating in a 3-on-3 league that many view as struggling to maintain relevance. She is not part of a product that requires artificial inflation to hit attendance benchmarks. We have to look at the environmental factors as well. It was reported to be cold in Philadelphia. Is it possible, is it probable, that free tickets were distributed to people simply looking to get out of the snow? When you have a massive influx of free admission, the attendance number loses its integrity. It ceases to be a metric of popularity and becomes a metric of distribution capacity. How many tickets can you give away? That is a very different statistic than how many tickets can you sell. The pushback against this narrative has been swift, and it has come largely from the Caitlin Clark fan base. These fans are being vilified for pointing out the truth. When a random account on social media, perhaps a fan page dedicated to another player like Paige Beckers, makes a false statement claiming this unrivaled event broke the record, they get fact-checked. And when they get fact-checked with the undeniable reality of 55,000 fans at Iowa, the response is to attack the messenger. The Clark fans are labeled as toxic or bad for the sport simply for upholding the historical record. But let's be clear, citing a verified attendance record of 55,000 is not toxic. It is accurate. It is necessary journalism. You cannot claim to have the greatest day in history when you haven't even reached half of the actual record. The Iowa Hawkeyes and their administration had the vision to place a basketball court on a football field because they knew the demand was there. They told the football team, they told the NFL prospects, "Get off the field, we have a basketball game to play." And the people responded. This is what living rent-free looks like. Caitlin Clark is not even in the building. She is not in the league. She is likely at home, enjoying her off-season, perhaps grilling in the backyard, completely unbothered. Yet she is the central figure in the psychological landscape of these critics. She is camping out in their heads. They cannot celebrate their own manufactured success without trying to use it as a weapon against her, and every time they try, they run headfirst into the wall of reality that is 55,000 fans. The footage exists. The images of Kinnick Stadium packed to the brim are iconic. You see the gals running out onto the field, surrounded by a sea of humanity. It wasn't a packed house in a small arena. It was a packed stadium. Comparing that to an indoor arena event, regardless of how heavily papered the house was, is a fool's errand. It is an apples to oranges comparison where one fruit is organic and the other is made of plastic. We need to address the ratings question as well. Analysts are already asking what the television ratings for this unrivaled event will look like. If you have 20,000 people in the building, but they are there because of corporate giveaways, does that translate to viewership? The 20,000 core fans who normally watch were likely the ones inside the stadium. Did anyone else tune in? Or was this an echo chamber event designed to create a visual for social media rather than a sustainable business metric? The desperation is palpable. You have accounts on social media, specifically those aligned with rival fan bases, trying to create a gotcha moment. They post the attendance numbers as if they are dropping a bombshell, only to have their heads checked right off their necks by the reality of the Iowa record. It was a bad idea to run their mouths. It was a strategic error to invite the comparison. Because when you invite the comparison, you remind the world that Caitlin Clark is an outlier. She is a statistical anomaly that the current establishment cannot replicate, no matter how many corporations they get to buy ticket pools. So here is the challenge. Here is the path forward if we want to settle this debate about drawing power once and for all. We need to see the Indiana Fever in Lucas Oil Stadium. We need to see the powers that be, the Colts, the Fever, the WNBA, come together and book a game in the house that football built. Put Caitlin Clark in an NFL stadium for a professional game. Tag the owners. Tag Pat McAfee. Tag the people who get things done in Indianapolis. If you put Caitlin Clark in Lucas Oil Stadium, you will see what a real record looks like. You will see what happens happens when you unleash organic demand on a facility capable of holding it. The critics and the slows taking their victory laps over 21,000 subsidized tickets would be silenced instantly by the sight of 60 or 70,000 paying fans. She is the catch me outside girl of the WNBA right now. How about that? Catch her at Lucas Oil, catch her at Iowa. The venue changes, but the dominance remains. The narrative warfare we are seeing is a symptom of a larger issue. There is a refusal to accept that the center of gravity in women's basketball has shifted. It has shifted away from the institutional gatekeepers and toward a populist movement led by a singular talent. The Unrivaled League is trying to build a moat around their castle, pretending that their numbers are historic, hoping that if they shout loud enough, people will forget the images from Iowa City. But we have been around long enough to know how this works. We know the difference between a crowd that was paid to be there and a crowd that paid to be there. We know the difference between a corporate write-off and a cultural movement. The attempt to equate the two is insulting to the consumer. This is a call to action for the truth. Do not let them gaslight you into believing that 21,000 is greater than 55,000. Do not let them convince you that a corporate event is the same as a grassroots revolution. The verified record stands. The history is written in ink, not in tweets. Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes set the bar at 55,646. Until someone puts a basketball court in a bigger stadium and sells legitimate tickets to beat that number, everything else is just noise. The slows can take their victory laps. They can pat themselves on the back for distributing tickets to fill seats. But deep down, they know the truth. They know that they are celebrating a fabrication while standing in the shadow of a giant. The standard has been set. The record is clear. And no amount of PR spin can change the fact that when it comes to moving the needle, there is Caitlin Clark, and then there is everyone else trying to catch up. Let's see the fever in Lucas Oil. Let's see the real numbers. Until then, stop trying to bullshit the public. The fans are smarter than you think, and the receipts are all over the internet. The greatest day in women's basketball history happened in Iowa City, outdoors, in front of 55,000 screaming fans. Anything less is just a pretender to the throne.